Chapter 7. The Mauryas. The Mauryas established the first ever empire in the history of India. It was called an empire because it was larger than a kingdom and was spread over a vast area. Emperors need more resources than kings because empires are larger than kingdoms and need to be protected by big armies. The main sources of information on the Mauryas are two books, Indica by Megasthenes and Arthashastra by Kautilya. The Indica tells us about the political, social and economic conditions of life during that period. The Arthashastra deals with how to govern an empire. It describes the administration of the Mauryas. Chandragupta Maurya. The first ruler of the dynasty was Chandragupta Maurya. Chandragupta ruled for more than 2,300 years ago. He overthrew the last Nanda ruler in 321 BCE. He was supported by his minister Chanakya, who was also known as Kautilya or Vishnugupta. Many of Chanakya's ideas were written down in a book called the Arthashastra. Chandragupta first conquered Magad. Next he defeated Seleucus Nicator, a general of the Greek king Alexander. Bindusara, 297 to 73 BCE. Chandragupta was succeeded by his son Bindusara. He defeated the rulers of 16 kingdoms and added their lands to his empire. Under him, the Mauryan Empire spread across the whole of the Indian subcontinent, except for Kalinga, present-day Odisha, and a few kingdoms in the south. The Mauryas were friendly with the kingdoms of the south. Emperor Ashoka, 273 to 32 BCE. Ashoka was the most famous Mauryan king and one of the greatest rulers ever. The British historian H.G. Wells had this to say about Ashoka: amidst the tens of thousands of names of merchants that crowd the columns of history, the name of Ashoka shines and shines almost alone, like a star. Ashoka governed his kingdom well. His numerous rock and pillar edicts, spread over a large part of India, give us a lot of information about this great ruler. Kalinga War, 261 BCE. When Ashoka became the king, Kalinga was the only kingdom which was not under Mauryan control. Kalinga was important as it controlled the land and sea routes to South India and Southeast Asia. Ashoka attacked Kalinga and conquered it after a fierce battle. The war with Kalinga was a turning point in the life of Ashoka. The death, destruction and suffering that he saw in the war made him very sad. He realized the futility of fighting a war and vowed not to fight any more wars. He devoted the rest of his life to serve his people. Ashoka's Dhamma. Dhamma is the Prakrit word for the Sanskrit term dharma, which means religious duty. Ashoka gave up the policy of conquest through war, Digvijaya, and began to follow a policy of conquest through dharma, Dhamma Vijaya. Spreading Dhamma became Ashoka's goal in life. His inscriptions were in Prakrit and were written in Brahmi script. Principles of Dhamma. The edicts of Ashoka described the meaning of Dhamma. It did not involve worship of a god or performance of sacrifices. Rather, it was a code of conduct and morals to be followed. It was inspired by the teachings of the Buddha. Through Dhamma, Ashoka wanted to instill the spirit of tolerance, coexistence, non-violence, and respect for elders in the people. He asked his people to speak the truth, respect other religions, obey their elders, follow the path of ahimsa, practice charity towards the poor, be kind to all, including servants and slaves, live together peacefully. Welfare measures. Ashoka was deeply concerned about the welfare of the people of his empire. In one of his edicts he says, All men are my children, and just as I desire for my children that they should obtain welfare and happiness both in this world and the next, the same do I desire for all men. Spread of Dhamma. Ashoka wanted people to understand Dhamma, follow it in their daily lives, and benefit from it. He took many steps to spread Dhamma. Ashoka himself followed the principles of Dhamma in his daily life. Ashoka issued edicts which contained the principles of Dhamma. His 14 rock edicts and 7 pillar edicts, besides many minor edicts, describe the reforms he carried out and the moral principles he encouraged. Most of these edicts were in the Brahmi script. The language was Prakrit, the language of the masses. Ashoka put up these edicts in different parts of his empire, generally in public places, in markets or temples, where a large number of people gathered. These edicts have been found in India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Nepal. Ashoka Pillar. The rock and pillar edicts of Emperor Ashoka are an equally valuable source. These edicts were inscribed on rocks and stone pillars. We know about Ashoka through his inscriptions. Coins are also an important source. Administration. Mauryan administration can be divided into 4 divisions: central, provincial, district, and village. The administration of the city of Patliputra was separate. Central. The king was the supreme authority who took all important decisions concerning the empire. He was assisted by a council of ministers. They acted as the king's advisors. Provincial. The empire was divided into many provinces, each headed by a prince. He ruled the province as a representative of the king and assisted by many officers. They had to follow the local customs and rules. District. Provinces were further divided into districts. The Pradeshta was the head of the district. He was assisted by the Yuktas and the Rajukas. They measured the land, collected taxes, and maintained law and order. Village. A number of villages made up a district. Villagers assisted government officials in marking the village boundaries, maintaining land records, and collecting taxes. Each village had a headman who was chosen by the villagers themselves. Patliputra. This was the capital of the empire. It was surrounded by a wooden wall which had 64 gates and 570 towers. There was also a moat around the city to protect it from enemy attacks. A committee of 30 members looked after the administration of the city. This committee was divided into 6 boards, each comprising of 5 members. Each board looked after a specific department such as 1. Comfort and security of foreigners. 2. Registration of births and deaths. 3. Industry. 4. Trade and commerce. 5. Inspection of manufactured goods. 6. Collection of taxes. Army. The Mauryan army had foot soldiers, horses, elephants and chariots. A separate department looked after the production of weapons. The Senapati was the head of the army. There were also a large number of spies, many of whom were women. Revenue. Land revenue was the main source of income. It was fixed between 1/4 and 1/6 of the produce, depending upon the fertility of the soil. Revenue was also obtained from trade. Patliputra, Ujjain, Taxila, Takshashila and Broch were important inland trading centers. Overseas trade was carried on with Rome, Egypt, China and Sri Lanka. Other sources of income were forests, mines, custom duties, fines and gifts. Arthashastra also mentions water tax. Decline of the Mauryan Empire. Ashoka died in 232 BC. His successors were weak and inefficient. the successors were always fighting among themselves and were disunited. The empire was so large that it was not easy to control the far-flung areas. In the absence of a strong central authority, the provincial viceroys declared themselves independent. Ashoka's policy of non-violence, ahimsa, made the Mauryan army weak and inactive. Ultimately, in 185 BC, Pushyamitra Shunga, a general of the Mauryan army, killed the last Mauryan ruler Brihadartha and established the Shunga dynasty.